Story 1. Vocabulary. When people use words incorrectly, I cannot help but correct them. Words have meaning. If you are going to use them correctly. I have worked to refrain from criticizing others out loud, but it is a genuine struggle. Story 2. People who read books for enjoyment occasionally are better than those who only watch movies and scroll through social media. Story 3. When I pay over $15 for a high-end cocktail, it better be made properly with the correct ingredients. No pre-made syrupy drink mix or low-quality liquor with too much ice. If it calls for a cherry, it better be a Luxardo. Story 4. The Oxford comma is essential. Only those lacking basic literacy omit it. I do not care what the Associated Press stylebook says. Story 5. I believe university degrees were more valuable when they were considered elitist. You can essentially purchase a credential now, but many are worthless. Story 6. If you cannot be bothered to read, spell, or use proper grammar when we both know you do not have a learning disability, or write or draw for yourself, please leave me alone. Story 7. Only individuals have such a small strategic reserve of snobbery. I contain multitudes and cannot be confined to one. Story 8. I don't donate unusual store brands to food banks unless they are brands I regularly buy for my family. I do donate standard store brands, but only those that I buy for my family. Story 9. I have come to enjoy finer hotels over motels. Now, I cannot afford the best, but I do expect a certain standard of quality. Story 10. Honestly, haircuts can be quite challenging, especially those associated with certain styles. There are many unappealing cuts. I love short-haired girls but dislike some of the choices they make in trying to look stylish. Story 11. Beer. I don't judge others for drinking their Bud Light or whatever, but I have stopped considering that a beer. Like white wine, it's a fine beverage for others. Story 12. I read a variety of books regularly, and it concerns me to hear that many people do not. I strive to avoid being judgmental, but it can be challenging to interact with those who do not read at all. Story 13. Despite being more liberal about gun ownership than I used to be and realizing we need better gun laws in America, you will not get made-up falsehoods past me. If you are going to advocate for better gun laws like I do, understand the topic thoroughly. That is one of the main reasons that some gun advocates do not take us seriously. Story 14. Seafood. My parents were from New Brunswick, and growing up in Ontario, we always had good seafood. Not frozen, but fresh. If we ate out, it was never at Red Lobster. Story 15. I firmly stand by Grey Poupon being one of life's finer pleasures. Story 16. Chocolate. White chocolate isn't real chocolate. Milk chocolate is for children. Please give me high-quality dark chocolate without any flavoring additives such as chili, mint, sea salt, or orange. The darker, the better. I do admit that on occasion I enjoy a dark chocolate bar with hazelnuts. However, if it's more than 90% cocoa, it might be a bit too much for me. Don't tell anyone I said that. Story 17. Good boots. I know they cost me a lot, but find me other pairs that will allow me to walk 7 miles a day without hurting my feet. Story 18. Most things I can afford, to be honest. I have embraced the buy-it-for-life attitude. If I can invest in a higher quality, longer-lasting product, I will. A good succinct way of looking at it is the Sam Vim's boot theory from Discworld. Also, I am spoiled by good matcha. Story 19. Food, in general. When we first met, my husband had very simple tastes when it came to food. Now, he laments the days he could enjoy meals at Denny's or Perkins. You've ruined me, he claims. No, I opened your eyes to fresh ingredients and thoughtfully prepared meals. You're welcome. Story 20. Ketchup. I have bought store-brand ketchup, but it is always runny and moves too fast when I apply it to my hot dogs or hamburgers. I prefer Heinz. That is one product I spend a little more on, and I tell my wife I am willing to pay a premium for that brand, simply because of how it flows. I know some people may think this is a trivial preference, but it is one of the few things I am willing to pay more for compared to other brands. Story 21. I had my son send handwritten thank you cards to all the relatives who sent him checks for his graduation. If he could accept an old-fashioned check, then he could send an old-fashioned thank you card. Story 22. I feel frustrated by people with poor taste in music who are unaware of even one renowned artist. Story 23. The good knives are strictly cutting board knives and should never be placed in the dishwasher. Do not use the meat knives on vegetables or the good meat knife to bone out meat. Story 24. Music is not that I refuse to like popular music. I like what I like. However, somewhere around 1985, creativity and commerce began to separate. Since then, popular music has increasingly become uninspired, while good music has remained obscure. Story 25. I view decaf drinkers with absolute disdain. Decaf coffee is like going down on your own sister. Sure, it may taste the same, but it's not right. Story 26. Skepticism. If something isn't supported by solid evidence, then I do not believe it. This includes religion. Story 27. I can't stand when fellow Americans say points when referring to goals in soccer. I don't care if you say buckets, but points are an entirely separate unit in soccer. Story 28. Hot dogs. If I see you putting Oscar Mayer or lower quality options on the grill this summer, I am questioning your ability to make even basic decisions for yourself and your family. Story 29. Where I go for birria tacos is unmatched within 150 kilometers. Story 30. I recently started getting tea from the farmer's market, and it has greatly enhanced my tea experience. I used to have to add creamer and honey to make the tea taste drinkable, mainly due to allergies. At the farmer's market, I received some loose-leaf tea from a vendor who explained the ingredients and brewing process, and I purchased an infuser. The difference is remarkable. Now, I have developed a preference for high-quality tea, and I feel I am forever changed when it comes to commercial brands. Story 31. Freshly made mozzarella. I travel 60 miles from my home to Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, New York, for it. Story 32. Astrology is unconvincing. There is no evidence or logical reasoning to support it, and it is not a comforting belief. It can be particularly frustrating to engage with other members of the LGBTQ+ community who claim that the body you were born with doesn't define your identity, yet believe that your birthday does. If you express disagreement with this perspective, you may be labeled a snob or even accused of misogyny. Story 33. The books I enjoy versus the fans who only appreciate the poor adaptation. I won't engage with them because there is no point, but they do annoy me from a distance. Story 34. Ribs. Once you know how to make your own, it becomes clear how poorly most places prepare them. Unless they are a barbecue restaurant specifically known for ribs, they are not worth it. Story 35. My water comes from our local aquifer, where I fill up from the natural spring in my town. I will not drink anything else. Story 36. The way you treat people is important. I have no tolerance for cruelty. I also avoid generic soda and even side-eye Pepsi, as they know they aren't the real thing. Story 37. Substandard restaurants. The cost of dining out is quite high now, so I'm not going to waste my time and money on a chain sit-down restaurant. I cook, so we eat most of our meals at home. I'll get fast food occasionally, but I'd much rather visit a standalone, higher quality, or local restaurant. Story 38. Using sarcasm can be pointless if you have to say it is sarcastic. Sarcasm isn't for everyone, and that's okay. That is what makes it enjoyable. It would be ridiculous if everyone understood it. The fun lies in the ambiguity. Some people may not catch it, but that is not my concern. I will be the first to inform someone if they miss a sarcastic comment, but I will never explicitly state it. You should be allowed to simmer. Sarcasm is a skill that can be learned and developed. However, if we have to announce it, we might as well not be sarcastic at all. Story 39. Iced tea must be freshly brewed with real lemon. No bottled products, concentrate, or powdered mixes. Story 40. Whiskey, specifically bourbon, and not in the way you think. I was into it for a very long time before the current craze where you could find all the big names on the shelf for a low price. Nowadays, I refuse to pay over $30 for a bottle, and if you think there is bourbon worth over a couple $100 a bottle, you're mistaken. Story 41. Dog food, also known as non-kibble dog food. I don't care if people feed raw or pre-made raw, air-dried, or another variant. However, my dogs will never eat commercial kibble again. Story 42. Cameras are not the same as high-end professional cameras. While your iPhone is good and suits most people's needs, it is definitely not the best option available. Story 43. Audio quality. I appreciate high-fidelity audio. I cannot listen to compressed digital files for long. There is a lack of dynamics. For example, when the vocals become loud, the rest of the music drops in volume. This is compression. Compression ruins music, and most people do not notice or care. Story 44. Modern films and television shows still offer plenty of quality in recent creations, but people's nostalgia blinds them, causing them to focus only on the negative. Story 45. I will sleep in the most expensive room I can afford and disregard the logic of, if you're vacationing, you won't spend much time in there. A vacation is just as much about exploring as it is about avoiding daily household chores. Story 46. This is low-level middle class, but I will no longer book a hotel room where I have to share with my kids. I want my own room, my own bed. Story 47. The hotels I choose for my vacations are always exceptional. I enjoy staying in a 5-star hotel with an ocean view and a balcony. Story 48. I cannot tolerate inauthentic, overpriced ethnic food created by non-ethnic individuals. I do not understand why people pay $19 for 3 tacos that taste terrible when the authentic Mexican-owned taco shop down the street charges $2 a taco for freshly handmade options. Story 49. Nike Dri Fit Socks. I used to think they were too expensive for basic everyday socks. I am sure there are better socks available, but I'm hooked on Nike now. Story 50. I recently traded in my old 1998 Subaru for a 2022 model. The previous one was so old that mechanics couldn't find parts for it anymore. They are the best cars I have ever driven. Story 51. Educational achievement does not necessarily indicate intelligence, but it reflects your pursuit of self-enrichment through dedication and discipline. Better schools and advanced degrees are impressive. Story 52. American cheese is overly processed, and I won't have it even with a burger. I also won't eat mild cheddar, Gouda, or Parmesan. The cheese must be aged and authentic. I know it costs more, but I prefer to eat less of the good quality cheese. Story 53. T-shirts. I worked in screen printing for a while and really love it, so now I inspect any type of print on a t-shirt for quality, and I am very particular about the blanks they are printed on. I would never choose a Hanes Authentic. Story 54. Work boots, dress boots, casual boots. I came across a high-end office chair from Human Scale that has 2 leather options. One costs about $1,100 and the other is around $2,100. It made me irrationally annoyed to the point that I went on a small rant about it. I could not find a solid source for the leather but was able to connect to a few other pieces of furniture after some cursory searching. Most of those pieces did not even cost as much as the option to add the leather, let alone the entire chair. It's such a rip-off that I will never purchase a Human Scale chair, even though they make good chairs. I am committed to informing others not to buy them because I care deeply about the leather used in my boots. Story 55. Art. There are times when using artificial intelligence for art is acceptable, but for the most part, it is unsatisfactory and an insult to those who dedicate themselves to the practice of genuinely creating art. Story 56. How negative and dark this place we live in is, but it makes me appreciate the beauty when it shows. Story 57. Showering twice a day, once when I get up and just before bed. If it's a messy day, maybe I will shower once in between. Story 58. No ketchup on hot dogs. Growing up in Chicago, putting ketchup on a hot dog would get you ridiculed and harmed. Story 59. I refuse to drink most domestic beers and stick to craft and imported varieties. I was spoiled because the first beer I ever had was in Germany during a high school music tour. Story 60. Homemade food. I genuinely feel disgust for people who constantly eat out, mainly because I always feel disgusted after eating out myself. Story 61. Cheese. The plastic imitation cannot compare to high-quality smoked Gouda. Once you've tried it, you won't go back. Story 62. Televisions. OLED or nothing and plasma before that. Going to a sports bar or doctor's office with all the inexpensive LCDs, with their sharpening and motion smoothing turned on, feels like a personal kind of hell. Story 63. Peer-reviewed research in reputable journals is conducted by experts with degrees in the relevant field of study. I understand that what the former executive of a multimillion-dollar company says in his videos resonates with you, but his opinions are not evidence. Until you grasp that simple fact, I encourage you to read the actual research. No, I will not watch his videos. I have better things to do than listen to individuals who lack credibility. Story 64. Coffee. Unsurprisingly, given my username, I am that insufferable person with the hand grinder, temperature-controlled kettle, and scale that measures with 0.1 gram precision. Story 65. Coffee to what I consider a reasonable point. Pre-ground coffee is inferior. Pre-ground light roast is burnt. I confirmed this by comparing pre-ground and whole bean from the same brand and roast. Even before brewing, I could see the color difference between the freshly ground and pre-ground coffee, and there was a noticeable difference in smell as well. I prefer light roasts for their caffeine content and flavor spectrum. Most dark roasts go too far, while medium roasts are inconsistent. Blade grinders are ineffective. They burn the beans. Most machine burr grinders are overpriced and too inconsistent and maintenance-intensive for their cost. I hate to say it, but a Chinese knockoff metal burr manual grinder with 2 centering bearings has been incredible and cost me around $30. Using consistent water is important. I use a zero filtration system. I don't believe that buying mineral water or additive packets is worth it at all. You can add a pinch of salt if you like, but the ritual is already expensive enough without additional costs. Rinse your paper filters before use, as this is a basic method for extractions and helps remove any lingering paper tastes and smells. Most coffee is overpriced bean water that delivers a bitter and bland flavor. You might as well take caffeine pills and drink more water. Add coffee to milk, not milk to coffee if you want creaminess. I am open to hearing any arguments, aside from those promoting mineral water. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.